And welcome to the Pathfinder. This is our third episode. You might recall we had Stacey Hewish the last time, but this one we got a special guest lined up for you. But wait, before I introduce you a special guest, I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Tony Neal, and my business is all about well-being. I run health retreats, and what I actually also do is I help business owners with customized retreats, workshops, and consultations to maximize their feelings of vibrance, happiness, health, and success. And I do this with my mission. And my mission, should I accept it, is this: to engage, educate, and inspire our audience towards high and lasting well-being to ensure that you can experience life's wonders. And that's what life is all about, is experiential wonders, isn't it? Now, let me please introduce you to my wonderful guest, Jodi Woelkering. So I'll just show you Jodi's picture. Just bear with me for a second. Hello, Jodi.
Hi, Tony. Thank you so much for having me on.
And where are you from, Jodi? Which whereabouts are you?
I'm in regional Victoria. So the town I live in is in Woodend, which is about an hour's drive north of Melbourne. Beautiful.
And what do you do, Jodi? Just to let the audience know what you do.
Yep. So I specialise in resilience, and that can be resilience from an individual point of view and people building up their own resilience, or it can be from leaders in terms of their own resilience and in terms of leading in a way that encourages resilience in their team. Yep. And it can also be looking at business or team culture as a whole and setting up environments and a culture where it's more resilient, so that the team members are able to deal with the stresses that come up a lot easier and a lot better.
Thank you, Jodi. Now, let me just read your bio. And you've got a wonderful bio. So let me just read it out. She has worked in financial, educational, service and product-based organisations in various managerial roles, from quality assurance through to financial management, business banking and branch management for more than 25 years. Decades of experience in the corporate world has shown her that resiliency is a key feature of every enduring successful individual and every organisational culture that is productive and collaborative over the longer term. While she was capable of doing these roles, feeling the effects of stress was a constant part of her working life. A few years back, she was very close to burnout and had a light bulb moment where she realised there had to be something better. She took on her path of helping others with her own stress through a series of education which morphed into helping others, which morphed into leadership and culture. Wow. She's passionate about assisting businesses to build an enduring, resilient culture at the whole culture level, the various levels of leadership within the business and at the individual level, so that business as a whole and the individuals within the business can experience the enormous benefits of an enduring, resilient culture. Wow. And isn't resilience so important in today, with all the lockdowns and that? We have to be resilient. I know from my workplace and my clients that there is just so much going on. We're getting flooded with the media of a lot of doom and gloom and everything, all the number of cases and things like this. Wow, don't we need resilience? Because resilience is a good strength, isn't it? Because when we think about it, you know, I can remember a really good a parable of this, example of this. If you stand on an ant, sometimes you think it's dead, right? And you just watch it for a little while, and a little leg will start moving, and all of a sudden another leg will move, and you get up and away we go. And that's like the resilience that you need. You need that thing to get up and go. No matter what happens, be able to have that strength. All right. On that, tell us a little bit about yourself, Jodi, about the challenges that you've had and your own challenges with resilience.
Yep, no problems. Now, probably in terms of resilience, you mentioned it briefly in the intro that stress throughout my working career was a fairly regular occurrence. So while I could do the roles that I were doing, but it quite often affected me in my own well-being. And obviously that goes up and down and peaks and troughs. But I reached a particularly bad point a few years back, and I think in the intro you called it a light bulb moment. I call them aha moments, light bulb moments. It was basically just there has to be something better than this, and it almost started a passion and a quest in me that started very much from a helping myself point of view, and as you said, it morphed into helping others, whether that's individually leaders or now business culture, because as you said, it's just so important. I mean, it was important and a growing issue pre-COVID, but COVID has made it a lot more aware, a lot higher awareness of it, but also a lot more tested and a lot more important.
Tell us a little bit about what does resilience really mean?
It's an interesting question because I look at it from 2 points of view. So the first one from an individual building their own resilience, you want to develop things in yourself so that you can stay calm when stresses are happening around you, when things are going wrong, when your resilience is being tested. You want to stay calm as much as possible. And there's certain things you can do in your life to help develop that skill in yourself. But the other side of it is very few people can stay 24/7 in that calm state. There's nearly always going to be, and me included, somebody who works on resilience many days of the week. My resilience still gets tested like anybody else. The second side is that when you are feeling stressed and your resilience is being tested, one is spotting it in yourself as quickly as possible, so as soon as possible, because being aware of it, you're halfway there to fixing it. And then two, when you do realise that your resilience is being tested, to bring yourself back to that calm, in control, logical state as quickly as possible.
So tell us, Jodi, a little bit about resilience. How did you nurture that, and how did you build up resilience? Did you do any special training or learnings to do that?
Yeah. So I started out the main official kind of courses I've done around that is life coaching, health coaching, and I'm a qualified success principles trainer. So one of the first things I did was read Jack Canfield's Success Principles, which is, for anybody who's looking for a very useful book, one of the probably my favorite, if not one of my absolute favorite self-development books. I also, as part of my life coaching training, became certified as a NLP practitioner, neuro linguistic programming.
What does NLP stand for? Like when you say neuro linguistic programming, what does that really mean in layman's language?
Yep. So neuro's the brain.
Yes.
So brain pathways. Linguistic is language. So it works on neural pathways and automatic reactions in the brain and different processes for either spotting what's going on or molding it, and often with it using language as well as other tools to either get a picture of that or to actually work through. There's some really interesting processes in NLP that help make some serious changes.
And would you say that with NLP, like, would you just summarise that to the layman? Would that be like working on thinking patterns, like in
Thinking
terms of
patterns is
mindset?
part of it. Yep, thinking patterns is definitely part of it.
Yeah.
But it goes from sort of more surface, sort of everyday level, through to some really, really deep, life-changing
Yes.
things. So for example, if you go surface level, a good example is they teach you about eye patterns.
Yep.
So what people do is when they're using different parts of their brain,
Yep.
their eyes dart in different directions, and most people don't even realize they're doing it. And
That's right.
each different direction means a different thing.
Yep. Well, that's good. That's excellent. And so just jumping back to resilience, just repeat, some of the things that you've actually done. You say you've done some NLP training. So what was the other ones that you've done?
Life coaching.
Yeah, life coaching. Yeah.
Training as a life coach, training as a health coach.
Yeah.
So both coaching based, but one's from a life self-development point of view. The other one's very much from a health well-being focus, and resilience fits in with both of them.
Yeah. You also mentioned a little bit about mindfulness. Have you done some more mindfulness work? Because that to me is one of the most important things, to notice it, right?
Not a qualified course specifically on mindfulness, but it is something that I've sort of, there's a lot of things that I've sort of done less formal training on. So things like watching some of the people in the world who are teachers in various things. So the beauty of something like YouTube these days is you can get information just about any topic from just about any world-leading experts. So that, along with books. So there's qualified courses, but there's also a fair bit of self kind of education I've done through things like YouTube and books.
Okay, that's beautiful. And what sort of triggered you to just focus on resilience? Why has that been so important to you?
Because it's been my main challenge. And I find that with a lot of coaches, we end up gravitating towards the things that have been our biggest challenge, or one of our biggest challenges in life. So because it was a constant issue for me, and I found some ways to really combat that and work on that in myself. It's always a work in progress, but I'm dramatically in a better place than I was a few years back. It's born out of having my challenges, working out my challenges, addressing my challenges, seeing the enormous benefit in myself, and going, my God, this has become my mission to actually spread this message to the world and help others.
Yep. All right. Now, I've noticed that there's a quote: "We don't have to accept stress as a way of life. There is a better option." What do you really mean by that?
What I see out there is stress has become such a constant for a lot of people, and a constant feature of modern life, and this is pre-COVID and during COVID, that it's almost got to the stage that people don't realise that they're stressed.
Yes.
And it almost, for most people, needs to get to that burnout or serious impacts on your life stage, so serious impact on relationships, health, that sort of stuff, before people have that light bulb moment and turn it around. Part of my mission is going, it's not actually normal. It's something we don't have to accept as a normal way of life. You can actually choose a better option. So half of that is awareness, and half of it is kind of teaching people how.
Okay. And so another question for you: how do you help clients with their personal resilience?
Yep. So I work with people on 3 levels, and I find that you need the 3 levels for most people where stress is a constant. You need the 3 levels to really make serious difference, but definitely the first 2 for almost everybody. So the first level is probably the easiest and the most fun to work with people on. That is when they're feeling stressed, teaching them to recognise it in themselves. And you mentioned mindfulness before. Mindfulness is one of the best ways to teach people to be aware of their own stress response.
Yep.
And once they do feel stressed and they realize that they're feeling stressed, their stress has a huge physiological component. So when we are stressed, certain things change physiologically in our body, and there's things that you can do to combat that physiological response to bring yourself back to calm a lot more quickly. So most of these are fairly quick and easy to learn. There's quite a number of strategies for this and different processes you can do. No one process works for everybody. So yeah, I always say to people, you'll find at least one that works for you to bring yourself back to calm, and just try them until you find the one that works for you.
Beautiful. And why is it so important that leaders build their own resilience?
Because leaders set the tone.
Absolutely.
So in any organisation, so whether it's business or not-for-profit or community, that sort of stuff, even like a coach in a sporting club, the leaders set the tone for the group. So that's they're setting a culture, and they're also, if they can be more resilient in themselves, they are they're one setting a like almost like a benchmark and a example for everybody else, but they're also a lot more able to act from a place of calm themselves. They're a lot more able to act from logical thought, because one thing people aren't aware of is that when you're feeling stressed, the thinking logical part of your brain functioning goes down, because you go into that fight or flight response, and part of that is your brain shutting down. So if leaders are more resilient, they're a lot more able to cope with those stresses.
That's beautiful. And in organisations, what do you see as the biggest or most common problems in creating a great culture?
Yep, there's a few. So I'll touch on a couple of the key ones. Psychological safety is a huge one. So that's basically, if there's psychological safety, it's an environment where people feel safe to voice their opinions. They feel safe to try new things. They feel safe to step outside their comfort zone, to be innovative, to try things and risk possibly failing or not doing it as well as the next person. And what it means is cultures that have psychological safety, you get more collaboration, more innovation, more a real lot more of a team kind of philosophy, and generally a lot more productive. People are a lot happier and more engaged, and they're more likely to stay with the organisation for longer. So psychological safety is one of the main ones, but there's lots of other ones. So things like people not having autonomy over their work is a problem. People not feeling heard and valued is a problem. People like having a sense of purpose for the business as a whole and their role within it. And yeah, there's a whole lot of other ones. So systems that actually empower them to do their job well. Good working culture dynamics in terms of how people relate to each other. So things like respect and politics and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, I could keep on going, but there's a whole stack of them that come up.
And you've inspired me there, because I think one of the things is walking the talk, and with a great culture, isn't it what the business's core values is all about? Say, for instance, so tell me, what sort of core values should an organisation have so that they've got great culture? What would the core values be?
Yeah, it is a little bit individual depending on the business, but there's some really key ones. So things like, a lot of businesses will go, our most important focus is our customer. And I would actually flip that a little bit, because they say, yes, our people are important. And I'm borrowing a little bit from Simon Sinek with what I'm saying, because this is something that he regularly says. He says, yes, your customers are important, but most leaders, if they say that their customers the most important, but yes, also our people are important, you almost need to flip that, because if your people are important and they feel the most important, they are the ones who look after your customers.
Yeah.
So if the focus is on customers being important, but your people feel really undervalued and unheard, they're generally not going to look after customers sustainably well over the long term. So having your people and your people's well-being as a real focus is a key. And one thing I've seen in COVID, unfortunately, and I do get why it's happened, but I think it's going to be shown to be a problem long term, is that a lot of leaders have understandably been focused on survival. And what that's meant is that there's been less money.
Yes.
And they've focused their money on things that are obviously needed to be spent to keep the business running. So things like supplies of product and obviously wages and that sort of stuff. And well-being for a lot of businesses, they've gone, yes, that's important, and we'll do a couple of little programs here and there. But the focus on well-being hasn't been there. And I think the cracks of that in people's well-being are really seriously starting to show. So there needs to be that focus on looking after your staff.
Yeah, I agree. You know, one of my positions that I've got I look at as a non-for-profit is I'm involved with GymHA. That's the Global Youth Mental Health Awareness, and one of the things that's coming out of that is the stress that's coming out, and it's the culture, and that's why I asked you about the values and that. And I think it sort of comes down from what I've heard, and you tell me if you agree with it. It's having the culture of trust, that and openness of this is what we're going to do and why we're going to do it. And I just think that's so important to filter that down to everybody. Do you agree with that?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So that people feel that everybody else has got their back and they trust the word of the person who says something to them. And it's just, it sounds so obvious, Tony, but it's so often missed.
Yeah, that's right. And I think it takes a lot of courage to do that, for the business to be open and just say, well, this is the reason why we've done it, the real reason, and to get comment. But I think I agree with you. I think that's terrific. Moving on, another question for you. How would you recommend business proceed if they're concerned about stressors and the effect of stress in their organisation?
Yep. So the first thing is to actually find out what's going on, to get a real snapshot of what's going on. Now, businesses traditionally, especially larger organisations, will try and do that through things like engagement surveys. My opinion on engagement surveys is, while they are useful, don't ever use them as your only measure. Ever, because the outcome can be influenced by the way the questions in the engagement survey are worded, and they can also be influenced by things like people's faith in anonymity in responses and that sort of stuff. So businesses need to get a snapshot of what the culture is, and a lot of leaders, they think they know, but they actually don't know. So what I recommend is you've got to do quantitative statistics to give you an idea. So things like engagement surveys, things like staff turnover, absenteeism, obviously things like stress work cover claims, productivity, whether people are meeting key performance indicators, that sort of stuff. So the quantitative stuff. But also, I think in a lot of cases, what's actually probably more valuable is the qualitative stuff. So that's things like observations on team dynamics of how people interact with each other and how they relate to each other, and things like having, and trust is a huge part of this, but having trusted conversations and anonymous conversations with people throughout the organisation to get a snapshot of what's actually what's good, what's bad, what needs working on, what suggestions, what people need from their employers, that sort of stuff. And I find out of all of it, that's probably the most useful, but you have to have that trust in that conversation. Otherwise people won't voice exactly how they feel. So it's a more systemized way of really just asking people and finding out what's going on, because you business is always the first step is to work out what's going on, and then rather than putting all that work in and then doing nothing with it, which also happens regularly, take that information and actually put into place systems, processes, programs for addressing those issues, and then revisiting it a couple of months down the track and going, okay, where do we sit in terms of this? Have we actually addressed the issues? How are people feeling now? What still needs to get tweaked? All that sort of stuff.
Beautiful. What are some of the key features of great leadership and great working culture?
Love it. To me, for great leadership, probably the number one important thing is emotional intelligence.
Yes.
And it's interesting because when you think of emotional intelligence, there's two parts to it. And I think most people only think of one part of it.
Yes.
So the first side of emotional intelligence, which I think people aren't aware of, is knowledge of yourself.
Yep.
So self-knowledge, self-discovery, self-development.
Yes.
So knowing what are your strengths and your weaknesses, what are the things that test your resilience, what are the things that cause you to excel, what are your triggers, are there certain things that result in behavior that you wouldn't like, that sort of stuff. So self-development is an absolute key in terms of developing your own emotional resilience. The second side of it is emotional intelligence of other people. So that's things like knowing how to develop positive relationships, knowing how to relate to people and to have empathy towards other people. And if you look at any leader who is successful over the long term, they will nearly always have emotional intelligence in how they relate to people. If you went back to leaders sort of even 10 years ago, definitely 20 years ago, it was nowhere near as common. But if you look now at your successful leaders who are successful over the long term, they pretty much always have well-developed emotional intelligence.
That's beautiful, Jodi. Now, one thing that you haven't told the audience is about the book that you're writing, and I'm so excited from what you've been telling me about it. Tell the audience about it, because I know you spent a lot of time and a lot of research. That's why you come up with all these nuggets of gold. So off you go. Tell us all about it.
Well, this interview.
I think you've got it, haven't you?
Yeah, this interview is perfect timing, Tony, because they arrived from the printer yesterday.
Yesterday.
And I'm actually going to start really promoting next week.
Yep.
So you're one of the first to actually.
Of course, we're the top. The campaign starts now.
Let's work out if I can get it properly in the camera without it.
Yeah, the world-class leadership. Wow.
There we go.
And so how long did it take you to write the book? And how much research did you do?
I'm trying to think when I started. I think it was around April or so that I started the process. So it is focused. Basically, it's directed towards organisational leaders. So like your CEOs, your CFOs, your CIOs, all those sort of higher up the chain leaders. And it's a awareness piece around what are some of the key issues that are cultural issues that cause problems in the organisations consistently, and that come up as a problem with a lot of organisations. So there's basically 10 chapters, and there's a major challenge in each of the chapters. So
that's beautiful. And I'm going to be one of your first customers, so I'm going to order one right now, because I think that's going to be absolutely valuable. And I think of corporate leaders, listen to what Jodi's got to say. She's got a wealth of information, and you've had a lot of experience both as a manager and also as a consultant going through all that. So value her words. Now, I'm looking at the time there. We're getting close to the top of the hour. So if there was one final message you'd love to tell the audience, what would it be?
From an individual point of view, I would say treat your own self-development and building your own resilience as an absolute priority. quite often it becomes one of those things that nobody says it's very few people say it's not important, but it's one of those things that get pushed aside because of work concerns or family concerns or whatever. So to treat your own well-being and your own resilience as a priority.
Yep.
And from an organisational leadership point of view, treat the well-being of your staff as an absolute
Beautiful.
priority.
Yeah. Beautiful words. Now tell the audience, how can you be reached? How can they find you?
Yeah, probably two main ways. So my website is probably the best go-to. So that's just www.jodiwoelkering.com. If you're interested in finding out more about the book, there's a book option on there, so you can go in and have a look there. And the other side is I'm very active on LinkedIn. So anybody who's on LinkedIn can just search my name on LinkedIn and reach out to me from there. If they want to have a chat to me, you can either go through messaging through LinkedIn or various places within my website. There's options where you can register for a complimentary consultation where we go through sort of the main challenges that you're facing and then take it from there.
Wow, Jodi, I'd like to thank you for what you've given us. My main takeaway is about the resilience, about how important it is, and what you said to me is noticing it at the first instance, and that's the most important thing. Notice that you're stressed. Notice that you're going down, and then do something about it by focusing on just doing whatever's needed and using the tools that you mentioned, like NLP and things like that. And I'm sure that in your book you've got all these little gems to tell people how to do that. All right, so thank you very much for that. And what I'd like to close on is that I'd like to tell the audience that the Pathfinder will be on again at some stage, and we will have other guests just like Jodi, and we really value you Jodi, with the actual comments that you gave us. There's so much expertise that we learned, and I want to bless you for what you've actually given, because this resilience is something that's so important, especially now in lockdown. So we can't underestimate what you've been doing, and we thank you very much for that. So on that note, I'd like to say bye to everyone and take it easy, and we'll see you soon. Okay, bye-bye.